Welcome to our deep dive today. We're going to be talking about data privacy.
Mm.
It's more than just those terms of service agreements that we all kind of blindly click through.
Right.
So we're really excited to kind of go beyond that today and figure out why data privacy is actually a strategic advantage,
Yeah.
not just a box to check. And to help us with this, we have a really fascinating newsletter from data privacy expert Debbie Reynolds. You might know her as the Data Diva.
Oh, yeah, she's great.
And she argues that there are these data privacy risks that organizations can't ignore right now,
Mm.
even if they're not, directly targeted by some of these new regulations.
Yeah.
So what's interesting to me is, we often think about regulations as being the driving force,
Right.
but she's saying, hold on, there's other stuff going on too.
It's a really interesting perspective.
Hmm.
And she really highlights that regulatory compliance, it's just the starting point. It's not the end goal.
Yeah.
There's so much more to it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Her newsletter is called Beyond Regulation, the immediate data privacy risks organizations cannot ignore.
Kitschy.
I like it.
It really is. And it dives into these three powerful forces that every business, no matter how big or small, needs to be aware of.
Mhm.
So the first one she discusses is business-to-business pressure. She calls it the supply chain effect.
Oh, interesting.
And I think this is really fascinating, how data privacy is becoming this key factor when businesses are choosing who they want to work with.
Yeah, it's a huge shift, actually.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. Large companies, especially the ones under strict regulations like GDPR,
Yeah.
they're pushing those standards down their entire supply chain.
Oh, wow.
So they're not just worried about themselves anymore. They're worried about everyone they do business with.
So think about your own business for a second.
Yeah.
If you rely on any large companies for your supply chain, are you prepared to actually meet their standards when it comes to data privacy?
That's a good question.
Because imagine your small business.
And suddenly you get this big client, this huge opportunity,
Mhm.
and they're like, okay, here's this massive privacy questionnaire.
Oh, yeah.
Or prove to us that you meet these standards.
Absolutely. It's like a hurdle.
Yeah.
But it's also, a huge opportunity to stand out from your competition.
Me too.
If you can say, look, we've got this all taken care of, you're ahead of the game.
Yeah. So Debbie actually suggests a strategy called strengthening third-party risk management
Yeah.
to deal with this.
Okay.
What does that involve?
Well, it's all about having a solid assessment program
Okay.
to evaluate the data privacy practices of all your vendors, your whole supply chain.
Oh, wow.
So we're talking detailed questionnaires, audits, making sure they're aligned with standards like ISO 2701.
Makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
You don't want a weak link in your chain
Yeah,
that's going to expose you to all these risks.
exactly.
So it sounds like getting ahead of the curve on data privacy
Yeah,
could actually be a competitive advantage for smaller companies.
exactly. Because if you can show those big companies, hey, we take data privacy seriously,
Yeah.
you become a much more attractive partner.
Almost like a seal of approval.
Yeah,
But it's not just about, pleasing the big guys.
right.
Debbie's second force is all about consumer-to-business pressure. It's
Yeah.
the power of public outrage. And this is what I was really curious about.
Oh, yeah,
Are consumers actually getting more aware of data privacy issues?
they are. Without a doubt, they're becoming savvier and much more vocal about how companies are using their data.
Mm.
It's like, take the example of General Motors. Recently, the New York Times exposed how they were sharing vehicle data with insurance companies,
Oh, yeah.
but they didn't really tell car owners.
Yeah, that was a big story. What happened?
Well, the public was outraged. I
Yeah.
mean, people were furious. And the outcry was so strong that GM had to backpedal,
Wow.
completely change their data sharing practices.
And it didn't stop there, right?
No, it didn't. Texas is now suing GM over this.
Wow.
They're saying it violates state privacy laws.
So it's not just about bad PR anymore. This is serious legal trouble.
Exactly. And this is where Debbie's suggestion of enhancing consumer engagement comes in. She's really emphasizing clear communication, making privacy policies easy to understand, and giving consumers tools to control their data.
It's about building trust, not just checking a box.
Couldn't agree more. Transparency and consumer control, they're crucial for mitigating that consumer pressure.
All right, so we've got pressure from big business partners.
Yeah.
We've got pressure from consumers themselves.
Right.
Where does the third force fit in?
Okay, so the third force is government to business pressure. And this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Because Debbie's point is that companies can't afford to just focus on the shiny new regulations. Because guess what? Those older consumer protection laws,
Yeah.
they can still pack a punch.
So you're saying There are laws out there that weren't designed for data privacy, but are now being used to go after companies
Exactly.
if they mishandle data.
That's what we're seeing. Companies getting sued under laws you wouldn't immediately think of as data privacy laws, right? Like being accused of deceptive practices for how they're using customer data, or even facing wiretapping claims for sneaky online tracking.
It's amazing how these older laws are being applied to this new world.
Yeah.
And remember, we're also seeing a surge in state governments taking action on data privacy, too.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just a federal issue anymore.
Yeah.
California, for example, has been very active in enforcing the CCPA. So this is where Debbie's advice to stay ahead of legal developments becomes so crucial.
Absolutely. This means you got to keep an eye on privacy-related case law enforcement actions, and not just at the federal level. You've got to look at everything, every jurisdiction.
It's a moving target.
Yeah, it's constantly changing.
Yeah.
So you got to be proactive.
So before we dive into the specifics of Debbie's other strategies, I think it's amazing how we've already seen these three forces at work.
Yeah.
You know, business partners, consumers, and the government, all putting pressure on businesses to prioritize data privacy.
That's right. And what I find so interesting is that while these forces can feel like a burden,
Oh, for sure.
Debbie actually sees them as an opportunity.
Oh, wow. Okay.
An opportunity to build trust, differentiate yourself in the market, and ultimately gain a competitive advantage.
So instead of seeing data privacy as just a compliance headache,
Yeah.
we can see it as a strategic imperative.
Exactly.
But how do we put this into practice?
Well, that's where Debbie's remaining two strategies come in.
Okay.
They offer some really concrete steps you can take to navigate this complex world and turn data privacy into a business asset.
Okay, let's hear.
One of them is all about investing in what Debbie calls privacy by design.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What does it mean to design for privacy?
So it means you're thinking about data privacy from the very beginning of your product development and operations.
Right.
It's not about tacking it on as an afterthought,
Right.
It's about baking it into your company's DNA.
So you're thinking about it from day one.
Exactly. It takes foresight, planning,
Yeah.
but it can save you so much trouble down the road.
Yeah, because if you design with privacy in mind,
Yeah.
you're proactively addressing these potential issues before they even pop up.
Exactly. Much better than trying to play catch-up after something goes wrong, right?
Oh, for sure. And it sends a strong message to your customers, too. Like, we take your privacy seriously.
Absolutely.
Now, the final strategy that Debbie highlights is one we touched on briefly earlier, the importance of incremental consent. Can you remind us what that's all about?
Of course. Incremental consent is about giving control back to the consumer.
Okay.
So as new ways of using data come up, you're constantly checking in with the customer.
So it's not just a one-time, I agree, and then you can do whatever you want with the data.
No. It's ongoing. It's about transparency and respect.
Okay.
So, for example, let's say you initially collected data for customer support, right? But then you realize, hey, we could use this to personalize marketing offers. With incremental consent, you'd go back to the customer and say, hey, we think we can improve your experience with these personalized offers. Would you be okay with us using your data in this new way?
I see. So it's about respecting the fact that the consumer's understanding of how their data is being used might change over time.
Exactly. And here's the thing. Incremental consent can actually benefit businesses too.
How so?
Well, by being transparent and giving those consumers more control,
Yeah.
you're more likely to build trust and avoid those, PR nightmares we talked about earlier.
Right.
So it's a win-win.
Makes sense.
Consumers feel empowered and respected,
Yeah.
and businesses can use data ethically and effectively.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive.
We have.
We've explored these three major forces that are pushing data privacy to the forefront.
Yeah.
And we started to look at some strategies from Debbie Reynolds for navigating this complex world. But we've only just scratched the surface.
There's so much more to unpack.
Areas.
In the next part, we're going to dive deeper into this whole concept of incremental consent.
Okay.
And we'll explore how it can be put into practice.
That's good.
And we'll look at some real-world examples of companies that are getting it right and some that are getting it very wrong.
Oh, that'll be interesting.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive into the world of data privacy.
Welcome back to our deep dive.
It's really amazing to see how this whole data privacy thing
Yeah.
has gone way beyond legal compliance.
Right.
It's now like a strategic advantage.
It really has. And as we kind of dig deeper into Debbie Reynolds' strategies,
Yeah.
it becomes clear that data privacy can be a powerful tool for building trust and strengthening relationships with consumers
Right.
and even business partners.
Yeah, you mentioned we were going to talk more about Debbie's concept of incremental consent.
Oh, yeah.
I got to admit, this is a new one for me.
Okay.
I'm really curious to see how it works in practice.
It's a really powerful idea. Basically, it means that instead of just getting like this blanket permission to use someone's data,
Yeah.
you keep checking in with them as new uses come up.
So it's not just a one-time, I agree.
Right.
And then you can do whatever you want with that data.
Exactly. It's about ongoing transparency
Okay.
and respect for what the consumer wants.
Got it.
So let's say, for example, you initially collected data for customer support, but then you realize, hey, we could use this to personalize marketing offers.
Right.
With incremental consent, you'd go back to the customer and say, hey, we think we can improve your experience with these personalized offers. Would you be okay with us using your data in this new way?
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So it's about giving consumers more control over their data as their understanding of how it's being used evolves over time.
Exactly. And the cool thing is it can actually benefit businesses too.
Really? How so?
Well, think about it. By being transparent
Yeah.
and giving consumers more control, you're way more likely to build trust
Right.
and avoid those, public backlashes we talked about.
Right.
It's a win-win.
Yeah.
Consumers feel empowered and respected,
Yeah.
and businesses can use data in a way that's both ethical and effective.
Sounds like a smart approach.
Mhm.
But I imagine it could be tough to implement.
Yeah.
Especially for big companies with these like massive data systems.
There are definitely challenges.
Yeah.
But Debbie outlines some practical steps
Oh.
companies can take to make it happen.
Like what?
Well, first off, you got to have a clear privacy policy that explains how data is collected,
Right.
used, and shared.
Makes sense. No more hiding behind pages of legal jargon.
Right. Exactly. And when you're getting consent,
Yeah.
ditch those long, confusing forms.
Yeah, nobody reads those.
Nobody reads them. Go for a user-friendly approach.
Okay.
Clear language, simple explanations, maybe some visuals.
It's almost like a mini conversation with the consumer.
Exactly. It's about having a dialogue, not just dictating terms.
I like that.
And finally, you got to make it easy for people to change their consent preferences
Oh, okay.
at any time.
So if somebody decides, you know what, I don't want my data used for personalized marketing anymore,
Yeah,
they can easily opt out.
absolutely. It's all about giving consumers control
Yeah.
and agency over their own data.
I'm really impressed with Debbie's approach. It seems both ethical and practical, but I'm curious to hear about some companies that are putting these principles into action.
Oh, there are some great examples out there.
Oh, perfect. Let's hear about a few.
Okay, one company that's doing a fantastic job is Apple.
Yeah.
They've made data privacy a core part of their brand.
Yeah, I've noticed they have been very vocal about their commitment to user privacy.
They have, and they've backed it up with real action.
Hmm.
For example, they introduced app tracking transparency,
Okay, yeah.
which forces app developers to get explicit permission
Wow.
from users before tracking their data across apps and websites.
That seems like a huge step towards giving users more control.
It is, and it's been really well received.
Good.
A recent study found that most iPhone users have opted out of app tracking.
Wow. That's impressive.
Yeah.
It shows that people really do care about their privacy and they're willing to take steps to protect it.
They are.
And it also shows that companies can prioritize privacy
Yeah.
without sacrificing innovation or profits.
It's a great example of how doing the right thing can also be good for business.
Totally. Now, on the flip side, what about companies that haven't done so well?
Oh, yeah, there are definitely some cautionary tales out there.
Let's hear about one.
Okay, a recent example that comes to mind is Facebook.
Oh, yeah. Facebook's had its fair share of controversies.
That's putting it mildly.
Yeah.
They've been involved in so many scandals,
Yeah.
data breaches, unauthorized data sharing, just a general lack of transparency about how they're using data.
The Cambridge Analytica scandal was particularly bad.
That was a major turning point. It really brought data privacy into the spotlight,
Yeah.
and it had a huge impact on Facebook's reputation.
Oh, yeah.
They face scrutiny from regulators, lawmakers, the public.
Yeah.
They've been trying to rebuild trust ever since.
It's a cautionary tale for any company that thinks they can ignore data privacy.
It really is. In today's world, data privacy is not just a legal or ethical issue.
Mm-hmm.
It's a business imperative.
You got that right.
Companies that fail to prioritize it,
Yeah.
they risk alienating customers, damaging their brand,
Right.
and facing serious legal consequences.
So what can businesses learn from both the good and the bad examples?
I think the main takeaway is that data privacy needs to be baked into the company's DNA
Okay.
from the very beginning.
It's not something you could just add on later.
Exactly. It needs to be a core value
Right.
that guides every decision, from product development to marketing to customer service.
And it's about more than just following the rules.
It is. It's about building trust, respecting your customers,
Right.
creating a culture of transparency and accountability.
It sounds challenging, but it seems like the companies that get it right
Yeah.
will really benefit.
They absolutely will. In a world where data is so valuable,
Yeah.
data privacy is becoming the ultimate competitive advantage.
I'm curious, though, are there any downsides to focusing too much on data privacy?
That's a great question. And yeah, there can be challenges. Implementing strong data privacy measures can require a lot of investment in technology, personnel, training,
Makes sense.
and there can be trade-offs.
Okay.
Like collecting less data might limit a company's ability to personalize things.
So it's a balancing act.
It is. But I think the benefits of prioritizing data privacy far outweigh the costs.
Right.
When you build trust with your customers and show them you're serious about protecting their data, you create a foundation for long-term success.
Debbie Reynolds seems to think so.
She does.
Her strategies offer a roadmap for navigating this complex world and turning data privacy into a business asset.
She's a true advocate for data privacy, a valuable resource for companies.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away from our conversation?
I want them to understand that data privacy is not just about checking boxes.
Yeah.
It's a strategic imperative that can drive innovation, build trust, and create a better future for everyone.
That's an inspiring message.
And it's one that's only going to become more important as technology keeps evolving.
Well said. Okay, let's take a quick break.
Okay.
And when we come back, we'll explore some practical steps businesses can take to implement Debbie's strategies
Sounds good.
and turn data privacy into a competitive advantage. Welcome back to our deep dive. We've talked about the forces at play when it comes to data privacy, the potential pitfalls, and then also the advantages of really getting it right.
Yeah, and we've explored some really interesting concepts like incremental consent and privacy by design.
Yeah, those were really cool. But now let's get practical.
Okay.
If you're listening to this and you're a business leader, what can you actually do?
Yeah.
What are some concrete steps you can take to put Debbie's strategies into practice and actually gain that competitive advantage?
Well, I think the first thing, and maybe the most important, is to make data privacy a top priority.
Okay.
And I mean, it can't just be something that's delegated to, the IT department or the legal team.
Right.
This has got to be something that the entire organization embraces.
So it's about creating a culture of data privacy.
Exactly. It starts with the leadership, setting the tone, making it clear that data privacy is not just about checking boxes. It's a core value that influences everything they do.
Okay, so how do you actually do that? What are some practical ways to build that kind of culture?
Well, one key step is training.
Yeah.
Make sure everyone in the company understands data privacy best practices.
Right, so not just the IT people.
No, everyone. Make sure they know how important it is to protect sensitive information.
Okay.
How to identify risks, what to do if there's a data breach.
Yeah, because you can have the best policies in the world.
Exactly.
But if your employees don't know how to follow them,
right,
it's all for nothing.
It's pointless. And it's not just about, one-time training.
Right.
Data privacy is constantly changing. You got to keep everyone updated.
So it's got to be ongoing.
Exactly.
Okay, what about the tech side of things?
Yeah.
What role does technology play in all of this?
Oh, technology is crucial. There are so many tools out there that can help businesses automate processes, enhance security, and improve transparency.
Can you give us some examples?
Sure. You've got data encryption tools to protect sensitive info.
Oh.
You've got data loss prevention solutions.
What do those do?
They prevent sensitive data from leaving the network.
Oh, okay.
And then you have privacy-enhancing technologies, which let businesses use data for things like analytics while still protecting privacy.
Sounds like companies need to invest in a whole suite of tools.
Yeah, they do. It's important to choose the right tools for their specific needs and the risks they face.
Now, what about privacy by design? How can businesses actually work that into their product development?
So privacy by design means thinking about data privacy from the very start of the process.
Okay.
Like when you're first developing a product,
Mhm.
you're already anticipating the risks and designing solutions to minimize them.
So instead of trying to add privacy features later,
Yeah,
you're building them in from day one.
exactly. And this requires a real team effort.
Okay.
Engineers, designers, product managers, privacy professionals all working together.
Can you give us a real-world example of what that might look like?
Sure. Let's say you're making a mobile app that uses location data.
Okay.
A privacy by design approach would be to minimize the data you collect.
Right.
Only collect what's absolutely necessary and give users control over their location settings.
So it's about being really intentional
Yes,
about how you're using data.
it is. And about giving users transparency and control.
Speaking of transparency, how can businesses get better at communicating with consumers about all this?
Well, you got to have clear and concise privacy policies.
Yeah, we talked about that.
But it's more than that. You've got to be proactive. Let people know how you're using their data.
Okay.
Send email updates, write blog posts, maybe even create tools that let users see their privacy settings.
So it's about building trust
Yes.
through open and honest communication.
Exactly. You got to show people that you respect their privacy.
Right.
That you're taking steps to protect their data.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. Creating a culture of data privacy,
Yeah.
investing in technology,
Mhm.
incorporating privacy by design,
Right.
improving communication.
Yeah.
Is there anything else businesses should be thinking about?
I think the last piece is monitoring and evaluation. Data privacy isn't a one-time thing.
Right.
You got to be constantly vigilant.
So what does that look like in practice?
It means regularly reviewing and updating your policies,
Okay.
doing risk assessments to find vulnerabilities,
Mm.
and staying up to date on the latest regulations and best practices.
So there's always room for improvement.
There is, and that's what's exciting about it. Data privacy is always evolving,
Yeah.
so there's always something new to learn.
And for businesses that really embrace data privacy,
Yeah,
they have a huge opportunity to stand out.
absolutely. Consumers are increasingly concerned about their privacy,
Yeah.
so businesses that prioritize data protection will have a real advantage.
So to wrap up our deep dive,
Yeah.
what's the one thing you want our listeners to remember?
Data privacy is not just about compliance.
Okay.
It's a strategic imperative.
Mm-hmm.
It can drive innovation, build trust,
Yeah.
create value for businesses and consumers.
That's a great message. And with that, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the world of data privacy. A huge thank you to Debbie Reynolds, the Data Diva, for sharing her insights. And to you, our listeners, we hope you found this conversation informative and thought-provoking. Keep learning, keep exploring, and until next time, stay safe and stay informed.